Hello, Alon June. 1 second. 1 second. Welcome to everybody today. Christy, Emerald. We're gonna obviously wait for a few more people to show up. To anybody who doesn't know, this channel revolves around Jiu-Jitsu guy. Alon, how are you, DJ? This channel usually revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof that we live in a simulation. Weird Barbie. Bundle of Cakes, how are you? Matt Killing It is here. Some of our regulars. What's up, Cal? The regular. Good to see you, man. Mr. B. I wonder if it's Mr. Beast that decided to join this chat. Minus. Great. We have some people showing up pretty quickly. This is amazing. We have some people on YouTube. Good to see you too, Cal. Been thinking about something since I watched your YouTube video this morning. Please share Mandalov's cakes. In the meanwhile, I'm going to turn on the water so I can make some coffee. But please send me the question. Let's see. It's going to be noisy for 2 seconds. I know, right? There's something about an afternoon coffee that is very liberating. Comments first. You come across so different on here versus watching the video. Oh, okay. Well, also don't forget that obviously the video is... first of all, which video are you talking about? There's something about recording a video that doesn't have the live interaction that makes it very different for whomever's presenting, because you don't really know. You're just kind of staring at the camera. So I guess it's the most direct way that I can express. I always try and aim to speak as if I'm talking to people, but sometimes it's kind of hard to nail because you don't have that immediate feeling that somebody's listening. Which video are you talking about specifically? One of the first ones that I released, or which one? It's the one introducing your whole idea and had a lot of editing. Oh yeah. That was the first video I put out. Also, again, don't forget that this was what 3 years now, 3 years ago, and slowly you develop the skill to be able to speak more naturally. Usually, on my podcast, I have people that I'm speaking with, which is, gives you the immediate feedback. But when you're just talking to the camera, I guess you're trying to stay as neutral as possible, but that's what comes out. And what's up, Mu Carey? I'm not sure how to pronounce that handle. And by the way, Mandalov's Cakes. Did you watch the one on here, or did you watch the one on YouTube, or which one? Seen any of your videos? I only know you're live. Oh, well, you should. And then you'll be able to tell me the same thing that Mandalov's Cakes is saying. So basically, first of all, let me reintroduce the subject to all the newcomers. Welcome, everybody. This channel revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof that we live in a simulation. We meet here on the daily to discuss science, philosophy, religion, spirituality, and a lot of different topics. Megan Grace. Today, I believe we will be diving into the differences between panpsychism and idealism. I think it's an important distinction, and I think it's a fun subject to talk about. But before that, I would love to hear your opinion on, or some of the thoughts on what you thought about after watching the video, Mandalov's Cakes. And by the way, if you prefer to come on and talk about it, you're more than welcome to do so. If you feel like just texting about it is a little bit too much work. Is there any validity to this thought? Could sound help uncover the wait. The gravit. You mean the graviton? Gravitron sounds a lot more awesome. Gravitron is basically it sounds like a transformer or something from Power Rangers. Uh, so the question is, can what I found help discover the graviton? I honestly never thought about gravity. Actually, probably obviously it's related because I do think that what we're seeing in the code is actually dark matter. Like I actually think that what we see is the content of dark matter, so to speak. Do you ever worry the code is a creation of the subconscious? Why would that be worrying? I wonder. Sound like Optimus Prime's bestie, the Gravitron. It's his best man. I also think there are a relationship between mold and mold. Between mold? What is mold? By the way, yesterday I discovered that I can like my own chat, which is hilarious to me. Look at this. What's the point of this? This is silly. I sorry, I don't know what. Oh, mycology. Okay. Wait, fungus and graviton? Hmm. That's an interesting intuition. Why do you have that intuition? I wonder. I often find myself questioning if something I think is only in my head or something I experienced. Yeah, that is the deep question. But I would say, Matt Killing, is that in your head, the phrase "in your head" has to go through some reestablishing as far as the concept, because everything you're seeing, even if you believe it's the physical world, is also well. First and foremost, it's in your head. So like there's a rendering of whatever it really is. If you like your own live or mods, it drags your viewership down. It's been told. Oh, interesting. Okay, well, good to know. Yeah, I only yesterday discovered that's a thing, and it was really funny to me because what if somebody just shows up and just starts clicking on their own chat, you know? But thank you for letting me know. Also, if you can tell me how to pronounce your handle, that would be awesome. Fangs is there. Mandalov's Cakes, would you like to share with us why you think that? Love, sound, and fungus. It's hard to articulate why. Interesting. So does it have anything to do with the fact that like with vibration? Would you say that it has something to do with frequency and vibration? Is that where your intuition comes from? Let me just make this. There you go. Perfect. And I wonder if we can push on someone and some wait. I am wonder if we can push on someone in similar experience. Sound of fungus. That tracks. Love Sound and Fungus sounds like either a name. It sounds like a name of a really cool band. Love Sound and Fungus. Yeah, yeah, man, killing it. That sentence was very confusing. I am wonder if we can push on someone in similar experience. The molecule, and the laser reveal the code to you. Uh, mm, so I spoke about it before in the chat. I'm not sure if you picked up on any of it, but there was a long trajectory to how I arrived at it. If this is why I was asking, did you watch my video on YouTube or the one on TikTok? A muckery. A mucker. Oh, a muckery. Okay, sorry, I'm too dumb. Muck is an adverb that means uncontrolled, violently excited, or in an undisciplined manner. Interesting. Violently excited. No, YouTube. Okay, so do you remember when I was talking about these numbers on the ground? These numbers on the ground were the first time that I saw some hint that I felt that was communicated from the other side. So in that sense, you can say that some messages came from the other side that were hinting at things, but it was the fact that the experiences that I was having were so realistic that made me start getting interested in the idea of trying to prove that this is a real space. Well, it's very clever. A mockery. I totally mean. It also made me wonder if you're just doing a big social experiment. No, but that would be a really cool one. That would probably be even more clever and awesome than what I'm doing. The truth about my project is a lot more straightforward. Is that I found it, I realized other people see it, I realized that this is too big for one person to take responsibility for. So I realized that we should, talk about it openly. And plus the fact that I knew that I need to get some smart people involved and get scientists on board. And I tried to email people, scientists in their fields, and it was a very difficult email to go through. Some responded, most didn't. And then I, kind of gauged what the pros and cons would be. And I was like, well, look, most people probably think it's crazy anyway. So, we postulate a lot of things. I'm proposing something concrete. Here's a method to see code like in the Matrix in a real reality. See what happens. And then people started reaching out. It seemed to be a very positive kind of interaction, very positive people that showed up in my life. So I took it as a positive note to keep going. And then eventually I posted it on TikTok. That's when it went viral. And that's really the thing that kind of pushed it beyond the simple thing that you're talking about in a around a small circle. I wonder if we are push. Wait, I wonder if we are push our own, if we are to push. You mean our own experience on others simply by sharing it? So it's definitely consciousness influencing consciousness, if that's what you mean, Matt, killing it. And this relates to our conversation today, which is the difference between idealism and panpsychism, which are two philosophical positions, somewhat similar but not exactly the same. Both postulate that consciousness are somehow fundamental to existence. It's just that in panpsychism, I never know how to exactly pronounce these words, but you can Google it. The position is that within existence, there is a field or a particle or something that is fundamental, responsible for the quality of consciousness. And in idealism, the proposition sounds the same, but it's not, is that mind, mental things, so like the properties of the mentality that we see, they are the fundamental thing. So it sounds the same, but it's not, because in panpsychism you assume that there's a world, and in that world you have something that carries the property of consciousness. In idealism, you're saying everything is consciousness. So it is the fundamental constituents. There's nothing else. All the other things, they're arising properties of that fundamental thing. And we can talk about the differences because I think these differences actually matter. And I think that up until this point, we maybe thought that it will never be relevant to anything technical, but I think my discovery and a lot of other things that are evolving right now in the space, including Neuralink and very technical things, will make it very relevant to answer this question correctly. That is the primary topic today, science. I probably asked it before I said all of this. Wait. Okay, PJ sent you an invitation. It was by mistake, but you're more than welcome to come on. Again, anybody who feels that they have something to contribute, you're more than welcome to come on and come and chat. Like, I have seen the code, but I think I wanted to see it. And I worry that it may be a problem. Wait. Like, I have seen the code, but I think I wanted to see it. Okay. Did you see the code in the way that I'm proposing it? Jesus' first phone. This is hands down one of the best handles I've ever seen. Gravitas, meaning misunderstanding on understanding of what people can't understand. No, I not. That's not how I boogie. I don't know what that means. Maybe you can clarify. Maybe whatever. What's up, Alyssa? Maybe whatever keeps us bound to the inness. Thank you for picking up on the concept, Mandela Cakes. I appreciate it. Maybe whatever keeps us bound to the inness while we're physically here is the same thing as graviton. That's an interesting thought. Let me think about that while we're chatting. So somehow gravity responsible for binding us to experience itself. Interesting. Oh, again, it sent an invite. Wow. Or if light particles have a smaller component we haven't discovered yet. That's very unlikely in this space. It's possible that maybe in the deeper space of whatever hyperspace is, light has a more fundamental constituents. But in our space, the chances of finding a smaller unit of light, they're basically zero because, well, it's mostly because of definition. The way we defined the fundamental part of our reality, or what we see that is possible to even talk about in terms of fundamental, these subatomic particles, these little glimpses that we call particles, like electrons, for example, and photons, they're literally zero dimensional. I know it's kind of a mind fuck because what do you mean? Like, what do you mean zero dimensional? They're a point, which a point does not have dimensions. So, like, the first dimensions is a line, right? And you can have a zero dimensional existing thing. I know it's a little bit hard to think about, but you can't go less than zero dimensions. This is why. And it's a matter of definition. So it's not like light is behaving in terms of, like, a photon cannot be a photon itself cannot have a volume of how much of a photon it is. It can have an energy associated with it, which is the associated with the frequency and the light wave that it's a part of. But it cannot, the second that it is what it is, it cannot be anything else. It's indivisible. There is no way of talking about it in terms of possibly dividing it. This is why it's not very likely. But how does this relate to the gravity thing, I wonder? I like this idea. I feel like maybe there's something there. The absolutely matter, I don't disagree, but if you're able to quantify it, it exists to someone. So I'm really trying to understand what you're trying to say, Jesus' first phone. Really, truly. If you can clarify, because I'm not sure I'm fully following it. Or are you saying it not to me? I'm riding a dragon, finding a rhinoceros. Your life is very exciting. I'm jealous. Matt killing it. Well, it was in the light, but maybe I'm talking about something else. I need to watch your videos. No, I'm asking. My question to you before I clarify is: did you see the code through the method that I'm suggesting, or in some other way? That was my question. What's up, Annika? We are bound by space and time, space-time, which is tied to gravity somehow. Yeah. Well, space-time is the way that space-time bends is essentially what gravity is, according to Einstein. If you're talking about things that don't exist, they exist at least to prove they don't exist. So I actually agree with you, Jesus' first phone. If I understand your comment correctly, the fact that there's a concept of it means it exists. Because either it exists in what we call the physical world, makes no difference, because our minds is clearly exists in space-time, whatever it is. And if the mind can postulate any concept, that concept by definition exists because it exists in something that exists in existence. So I fully agree with you. But did you already eat? Aquarius 1982. Why? Do I look hungry? Hi from Oklahoma. What is this channel about? How are you? Amazing Emily. Usually, we're discussing the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof that we live in a simulation. But we're meeting here on the daily to discuss all kinds of topics like religion, spirituality, physics, uh, science in general, philosophy, Elon Musk, whatever comes to mind. Ram Dass, all kinds of fun subjects. Or pass it around. Sharing is caring. I'm not sure. Oh, I see. I see. I'm now only now picking up on the jokes because a lot of it is I'm kind of reading everything in one. I'm not sure what exactly your method was, but it involves observation of light in a state of state derived. Basically, it means that you have to project a diffracted laser on the surface, and if you project the laser on the diffracted surface while you're on a particular molecule that I cannot mention on the live chat, you will see code running in surfaces. That is the method. Thank God, appreciate you. What's up, Marcus Teak? Simulation guy. That's me. Simulation daddy. Also, it's really funny because I just looked at your profile picture. It's literally my emoji. My emoji I'm using is on WhatsApp and things like that. From a 3-letter substance, exactly. I'm gonna go through this round of the comments, and then I'm gonna maybe talk a little bit more about the difference between panpsychism and idealism. Yuji Krishnamurti. What about him? Oh, would you like to talk about Krishnamurti? I know of him. I don't know enough about him to actually have a full-on conversation. Dangle thoughts on YouTube and Code of Reality. Thank you, Cal. Wait, Righteous Bomb. Righteous Roombas is the best. Yeah, it's mine too. So I think we're talking about the same thing. Right. So you're saying, Matt Killing It, that after you saw the code in the laser, you were worried that maybe somebody planted that in your head. I would suggest to you that if you saw what I'm talking about and not something like because there's a few things that you see before you see the digits themselves. I don't know if you did see the actual Japanese looking characters, but until you see these Japanese looking characters, and by the way, YouTube, I see your comments. I'm gonna respond in a moment. How are you, Dylan? We talking about all kinds of things, but no, not talking about if matter is comprised of photons. No, our biology and our consciousness simulate reality. Yes, but reality, you can say the reality codes for our biology, so it's kind of like a one circle. And to your question, Matt Killing It, if you saw the code that I'm talking about, again, you'll be able to tell me right now. But if you did see the Japanese characters, I would say that the idea that somebody planted it in your head is kind of untenable because they're very concrete. There's a few structures that you see before that are the structures are more, I guess, a little bit more shape-like versus language-like. These, I would say, if I would plant this idea in your head, it would be somewhat logical to assume that maybe you can plant this idea in your head. I don't know if you saw my second video on the topic on YouTube, in which I'm going in some detail about priming in psychology, which is essentially what you're referring to when you prime somebody else to see certain things or think about particular subjects. With psychedelics, it doesn't work like that. You can plant some general concepts, but you can't plant an idea that then manifests itself on a regular basis without anything ever replacing it. So, like, I can talk to you about owls, and you can maybe see an owl here and there, but you're not going to see only owls, super concrete owls that come and talk to you like super, specific. That's not going to happen. The fact that the code is so specific and complex, the way it appears makes it clear that it's not something that could have been planted in your mind. That coupled with the fact that I've had this experiment run in multiple different ways. One of them is in which I told people nothing about it and they saw the code, or I told them something else and they still saw what they were supposed to see versus the thing I told them about. So I don't believe is nothing. In nothing because I understand myself. Can you explain the Saturn moon matrix? I don't know anything about the Saturn Moon matrix. Would you like to tell me about it? I can look it up. Saturn Moon matrix. Yeah, I know. Okay, so there's some YouTube, TikTok videos. Not familiar, guys. So you're gonna have to tell me a little bit more about. Usually, I don't really involve myself with these kind of hypotheses that don't have a way to verify them, but I'm always open-minded. So I would love to hear about it if you want to tell me about it. I am a teacher. What is a really good piece of advice you could give me about supporting teenagers? I appreciate that you think that I have something of value to say on this topic. If I would have a teenage son right now, I think the best advice I would give them is to get themselves into some kind of a frame of some uh, practice that allows them to hone in on their emotional control, because that's the thing that is missing the most in teenage years. If you can give that advice a little earlier in younger years, so I would highly recommend some form of meditation and practices for at least 2-3 years in a serious frame, not just like at home for 20 minutes a day. That would be one of the best advice I can give for life for anybody, because it's an amazing skill. If you mean something more specific, you can ask me and I would see if I have any coherent ideas on the topic. Did you ever check out wait, UG's thought? I saw geometric patterns that formed lines of what appeared to be code. The shape, that's all I saw. Ah, yeah. So that's that. See, this is why we have this conversation right now, Matt Killing It, because these shapes are not what I'm talking about. These shapes are just these shapes are made out of the code. So if you look closer in the beginning, they look really, really minuscule. They're tiny, almost microscopic, almost. If you look closer, these structures, they're made out of these tiny, tiny shifting characters. And these characters is what puts it over the top. The characters is what changes your assumption that maybe you're seeing something that is influenced by the substance or anything like that. We are real only in our understanding, not actually, but truly. This topic really scratches an itch in my being, love the journey and rival to reality. Well, I appreciate that. But they were complicated shapes. Yes, but unless you get to the actual language, it still doesn't, as a mockery said, it still doesn't scratch that itch. That itch is scratched when you see the language. Prison planet theory, reincarnational soul trap. Yeah, I spoke about it before. I'm not big on these concepts because they are very defeating. We don't really there's a lot of speculation there, and there's not really a good way to verify this. I also don't see a hint of that, to be honest, when I'm going into the space. So I feel like all of these assumptions about us being prisoners, or it just puts us too much in the victim mentality, which I tend to not really appropriate myself, because I feel like it's not doing anything aside from making you feel like hopeless. Prison planet, complicated is the wrong way to say it. No, you mean complex. I get it. I'm telling you, if you see the actual digits, it will change what you're saying right now. Reincarnation is real and the Earth is prison planet. Yeah, I've heard this before. I don't subscribe. I believe that you, to some degree, influence the way that you interpret your experience. So there are actual things happening, and then your frame of what you think is going on is really your experience and therefore your life. So if you assume that you're a prisoner, as alluring as this idea, and as cool as it is, maybe in some way, but essentially all conspiracy theories suffer from the same fault for me, which is that all of these conspiracy theories are of a scale that you can't do anything about, right? Unless you're going to be some kind of a crazy multidimensional James Bond that goes and fights all the forces of evil. And maybe that is the reality you're trying to create, and that's fine. But I do feel that these postulations about standing against these stupendous monumental forces that you can't do anything about, they play no other role than to just kind of tell each other about it, and then having this little dopamine spike of like, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? That's it. On the day to day, if anything else, it just kind of creates this defeating, lowering feeling that kind of encloses you, and it makes you feel limited. That's my perception of most people that carrying these ideas. I'm not saying you are, but almost every single person that I've met that carries these ideas, they also have a very negative view of humans, of what's possible, of progress. Everything is kind of like set against them. The government is doing this, big pharma is doing that, and it's just like this like endless game of how many things are wrong. And then the same people complain about the news that say all day that something is wrong, and they do the same thing. They keep saying everything is wrong, everything is wrong. It's like, dude, have a go have a drink, meet somebody you like, go have great sex, have some food, do something, like just life is great. There's so many great things. To the extent that you want to say well, we should know if we're in prison. Well, I would submit to you that the way that anybody arrived at these theories is flimsy at best, and I don't want to say what it is at worst, but it is like there's no solid ground there. It's just all like speculation on top of speculation on top of speculation, and it's constantly being people constantly miss the point that like every single assumption they make, you could make 10 other arbitrary assumption on that level, and then they pick one and they think that somehow is the one for no really good reason, and then they build on that. So it's like a house of cards. Then you build the next one and there's other 20 arbitrary choices you could have made there, and you made that one, and then you keep going. So every single step that you make in these elaborate conspiracy theories are all shaky, don't actually hold water when you look closer at them. So they're just kind of like mental masturbation for me. I don't know. They don't really. They're good for clicks. They're good for YouTube. They have no solid ground as far as I can tell. I do a bit of astronomy, but never heard of the Saturn moon thing. Tell us about it. Yeah, I feel like it's one of these like conspiracy theories. There are. Oh my god, I keep sending invites again. Anybody who I send an invite, you're more than welcome to come on. I always welcome a good conversation. But it's just crazy how you try to scroll and just sends an invite. There are several things that hold reality. Consciousness isn't one. Wait, there are several things that hold reality. Consciousness isn't one of them. How can you ever know that if consciousness is all you really have? Real question, Jesus' first phone. Kyborg Cyborg, which is a tongue twister and a great handle, saying Saturn controls souls, and the moon is so that wipes our memory when we die. See what I mean? Like, look how many claims are in this that are completely just so arbitrary, right? Saturn controls souls. How? In what way? And on top of that, which is like we made an assumption. Now let's go on top of that. It's like this assumption has no real like basis in any like rational thought about anything, right? And then on top of that, and the moon is so that wipes our memory when we die. Why the moon? If you have a civilization that can control an entire computational matrix you're in, why do they need the specifics of a planet to do the actual controlling of the soul? And therefore, why do they need a moon for the function of wiping your memory? They can just wipe your memory. See what I mean? Like the level of unnecessary specificity is absurd. And this is the most charitable thing I can say about this idea. One point versus is kind of like when people worried about the government kind of injecting things in you to spy on you or listen, like things like that. You're carrying your phone with you all day long. Your phone can be tracked by anyone basically, and they can listen to you all day. So all of these tools already exist. You don't have to worry about anything else. One point versus mindfulness meditation. Wait, 1 point versus mindfulness meditation. What does that mean? White light, when you die, erases your memory and then you reincarnate. So again, like I said, 10 arbitrary assumptions, and 10 I'm saying to be like I'm being charitable with 10, right? You have like a billion assumptions that you make here. White light, you don't know if this white light is actually happening or this is some kind of an effect to the brain. Let's say it is a real effect. The white light, all you can go by is how things feel, right? People report that this thing feels like bliss, like heaven. Now, if you want to say that, well, that's just a trap, how do you know? Like, it's just an arbitrary decision to say, well, anything that feels like bliss is a trap. Now, I'm not even getting into the whole, like, it's obviously spoken out of fear and seeing the world in terms of like, just like everything is wrong, right? But This is the ultimate version of that. Here you have an example of everybody coming back. People who saw the light, we're not talking about any other experience right before death. People who see the light always report a feeling of complete bliss. So unless you want to say that every time you see the feeling of bliss, it's somehow a trick to make you think, like, why do you even need this trick? You don't need the trick. You can just, it's completely out of your hands. Why do you need people to walk towards the light, do that? Why is that? And then you can make a million arbitrary assumptions as to postulating why that's the case. Well, maybe you need to get closer to the light so they can actually erase your thing. Why would proximity to the light matter? Like, it just, again, it's just like, it's so clunky, unnecessary, not, doesn't make any sense. Like, do you not share what I'm saying right now? Like, do you not share that view that this is like completely arbitrary and silly? The only reality, don't worry, bro, have a drink. Exactly. Like, if there's nothing you can do about it, right? Enjoy whatever time you have. Worrying about what can happen. I've said this on this live quite a few times. So people, they join in every day. They heard me talk about this, obviously, right? But like this idea that people like warn from the end of days, right? And then you say, well, like that last second, is it really worth all of that just to be able in the last second when you see the mushroom cloud to be able to point to it and say to other people, see, I told you so. Do you really think that moment is going to feel that good that it was worth spewing that all your life and living under the fear that it might happen versus just enjoying your life? No, clearly not. But can take it anyway. Wait. Okay, so let me scroll back real quick. 1 point versus mindfulness meditation. White light when you, okay, we got that. The only reality is one that you perceive. Fully agreed. You can only talk to what you see, to what you experience, not see with your eyes. But I'm assuming that's what you meant. Isn't Buddhism basically about escaping the prison of samsara? Uh, you can say that only the, well, I guess you can say that the Buddha basically talked about the fact that as long as you are within the karmic frame, you're always going to be a prisoner to, but you're a prisoner not to the world, but to your own predisposition to attach to the world. And that is actually a very profound realization. So it's not like anybody else is holding you in prison, you're holding you in prison. The price you're paying, which actually can maybe relate somewhat to what Mandalov's cakes was talking about gravity and consciousness, which is that the gravity of being attached to matter is essentially consciousness's attempt at placing importance to what it experiences versus knowing it's just all kind of like a, like content, but it doesn't really hold any real importance in the grand scheme of things. So as long as you get attached to matter, you will suffer necessarily because everything that goes up must come down. The only way out of that is nirvana, which is outside of samsara, right? Outside of the whole process, in which there's just pure experience and you're not attached to anything else. So in that sense, you can say it, but all of these theories about you being held in prison by someone else, it's once again, first of all, it's a blaming finger. So it takes all the power away from you. In Buddhism, you have a way, the good news is that you have a way to step out of this craziness by doing the work and just learning how to detach from everything, right? In the case of the earth prison or any other conspiracy theories that postulates you being controlled or imprisoned, that element doesn't exist. It's just telling you you're a prisoner. It's a very down pointing kind of theory. That's the main difference, I would say. Thoughts on time travel? Not many, actually. I don't know why, but I was never gravitating to that idea. Possible, definitely possible from the standpoint of physics. Never really grabbed me because I always felt it would be outside of our reach, but I might be wrong. Maybe that's exactly what's happening with aliens. And to Jesus's first phone comments, that's perception, not reality. But this, what is perception, not reality? Your perception is your reality. There is no other reality to you. You can't possibly talk about anything outside of your perception based on Buddhism. So yeah, again, I don't know if the comment came before I went on my little rant, Kyborg Cyborg, but that would be my answer. Which is the main difference there is that what the Buddha taught was a profound realization about the human condition or the condition of any conscious creature, in which you simply you are tethered to content, not just the physical world, by the way, because there's different realms, and you can get attached to anything that is of content. What's up, Emily? Good to see you. Also, I saw your email. Excited to check out our episode. Everybody can go check out our conversation on the Emily Moyer channel. We had a really nice chat, and it was a fun one. So, highly recommend to watch that one. Thank you for having me, by the way. It was great. And the difference between what the Buddha taught and these ideas is that these ideas are designed to just, well, first of all, I would claim that they're designed really to just kind of grab attention. So they're doing the opposite. They're not giving you an escape mechanism. They're just kind of telling you that's what's wrong. That's what's wrong. That's what's wrong. Just like the news, right? Okay, well, do you have a way to solve it? Oh no. Okay, well, just enjoy your life. That will be my answer, right? Unless you have some kind of a thing you're proposing that would actually make it better. You might can take you anywhere you want. It's based off samsara, and there's a way to escape the reincarnation trap. But notice again the language, right? Escape, trap. None of these words were used by the Buddha because these ideas of they are disempowering. They are taking something away from you as a conscious agent. They're not designed to help you. A language that is used in this way is nowhere near being a thing that can help you climb out of something. If anything, it pulls you down. There's an energy to it, right? So the only thing that can truly get you out of it is a practice. And that practice is simple, and it's not based on concepts. It's not even based on ideas. It's just based on practice of paying attention to your body, to your breath, to the world, and so on and so forth. But this could furthermore influence my experience. I feel like I'm walking on Mobius Path. I feel like I'm walking on Mobius Path. Once again, that sounds like a name of an album of a band. It's awesome. Walking on a Mobius Path. That's a great one. Somebody should steal this. Fantastic advice, just be as good as you can be done. Exactly. Can you speak on neuroscience behind memory formation? I am not qualified to do that. I mean, I can tell you a little bit of what I know, but everything has to do with cognitive science from a technical standpoint. I am not very well versed, and I probably should be more versed. So maybe I should read up more on that. Do the things that keep you trapped. The sacral chakra stuff, root chakra. Again, stuff that I don't really know enough about from a technical standpoint, Kyborg, Cyborg. But even when it comes to the technicalities of all the spiritual stuff about root chakra and all that stuff, from what I understand, the sacral chakra is not a trap. It's part of the function. In fact, it plays a key role in your salvation, if I remember correctly. So like being able to channel your sexuality properly actually creates an open channel that allows you to be in more open communication with the all, right? So like all of that stuff is not shadowy or dirty. It's part of the connection. We made it shadowy and dirty in the Western world. I have to go to the store. We'll catch up later. Always a pleasure. Absolutely, Matt Killingham. Good to have you here. I find it interesting that this code could only be observed once we develop tech to do so. Interesting. So yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. So basically, before lasers existed, you couldn't do it, which is an interesting point. Yeah, I think interacting with higher faculties of the world require almost like signifiers that your intelligence is on a certain level. So by the fact that your civilization could build lasers, by definition signifies to the universe that you have a certain level of understanding of what's going on. Now, in this case, it's a technical understanding of something in the universe, and there's also another ladder to climb, which is, I guess, understanding about your inner world and how it connects to the rest of it. And that's the other climb. And then together, they should bring you to a level that will allow you to open some kind of a big gate, right? So I agree with you. The fact that you could build this technology tells you something fundamental, or tell the universe something fundamental about your state of affairs. And at the same time, we had to figure out how to synthesize the molecule. We had to figure, because you can't do it with not a synthesized version, right? Maybe you can, but most people can't. And if you can bring it to a level where it's more democratic, in other words, you don't have to go into like some kind of a practice for 20, 30 years in order to be able to unlock that ability, but you just do something that allows you to be in that state. So that, coupled with the technology of lasers, coupled with probably some other elements that we don't even see because they're completely invisible to us, because they're kind of the water we swim in, right? So one of them can be the fact that progress is possible. This idea was completely foreign to most humans that ever lived. Most people, until the scientific revolution, never considered that they can actually innovate something in nature. The perception was everything that is to be known is already known by God, and the only way to know anything is to ask God, to be in communication with God. That is the only way. The idea that we can use our own minds to understand something about the world and then use this understanding to build something and to make something new that didn't exist before, that was a foreign concept. This concept, until it wasn't really established very well in society, that's a mental tool that, unless you have it in culture, there's certain things you can't do because you're not going to have convictions that are large enough for large sums of money to be allocated to do certain things. You wouldn't have the scientific institution. You wouldn't have companies that are trying to build technologies because nobody thought it was possible. So in that sense, you can even think of certain thought processes or ideas to be technologies, to be tools that open gates. So all of these things together signify to you and to the world that you are on a level that you're ready to engage with certain kinds of information. So I fully agree with you there. Just as the console is not instantly revealed. Yeah, I guess it can also be thought of as, but it's always just to who believe it. Yeah. How you doing? Del Plat Plate Plata TV? Del Plata TV. And yeah, I've been told that I look messy. Take it as a compliment. Jesus' first phone, my words have no weight to those who don't listen. Dude, if this I know you mean it well, but it sounds like the most uh spiritually passive aggressive thing you can say. If you don't listen to me, you just don't have the capacity. Let's see. It's interesting how good boy. Hey, hey now. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. I have a new puppy, and I gotta always make sure that it's not up to no good. It's interesting how white light trap thing is is opposite the Tibetan Book of Dead. I gotta save this comment because I don't quite know what that means, but it sounds awesome, Chase. It's interesting how white light trap thing is opposite the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Can you clarify? That's interesting. I don't know what you mean by that. The only reality is what you create. It's fantastic. It's not quite what I mean. I mean literally you can't talk about anything outside of your perception. You can talk about things that are plausible in the context of what you're experiencing now, but you can't really talk about things that don't make sense or not in the same uh, plane of emergence with things that you're already experiencing. The fact that you know that a lot of the invisible forces exist, like magnetism, for example, is that, well, we have a theoretical framework, which I would claim is also a type of a sense, but you can't, like, the fact that we know that magnets work is because we have muscles. Like, ultimately, we know it's real is because we have muscles, and we muscles feel resistance. And if you put two magnets together and they go like this, and you go, wait, there's an actual force. So the only reason you really know it works, ultimately, not just theoretically, is because there's two physical objects that exert this thing that you probably only hypothesized existed before. And because you feel the influence and anybody can feel it, that's the reason that you know it's actually happening. And then you can extrapolate to what is also possible obviously, like nobody has ever seen and probably never will see a magnetar, right? Which is a very dense dead star that collapsed to such a degree that it created enormous magnetic fields. But we know that magnetism is real. We know how processes usually behave, so we can make deductions from that. So we can make postulations about what's also possible. But the things that you don't have a way to experience with your senses, and completely disjointed from the continuum of all the other things you can experience, they will be completely invisible to you, even if they exist right here. I mean meditation by focusing on one thing versus meditating. By focusing on one thing versus meditating, focus being aware of all sensations, right? I think because your last comment, polyphogy, polyphogy. I think because your previous comment was too far back. Can you remind me what this is related to? It's basically a series of illusions to distract you from going towards the white light, but you're supposed to go into the light. Maybe, yes. Spore Muse. Hey, Danny and friend, love and good vibes to you all. Thank you so much, Spore Muse. You're always so positive, and I love that. Life is what you make it so simplify. That is true. A lot of things aren't important to you. Make them important if that's how you feel. Wait, a lot of things aren't important. You make them important if that's how you feel. Yes, I agree with that. You know nothing. Somebody said, Jesus' first phone, you know nothing. Wait, are you saying that you do, but he doesn't? Or are you saying that none of us know anything? Which one do you mean? Brand. Oh, what's up, Alvaro? I don't know what this means, brother, but I know nothing and I'm happy with that. Great. This is content I can leave anytime I like, but we are all just people. Exactly. There's no way to solve questions that can't be answered. It's your energy, no one else's. Do you think Stoic and Buddhist principles have much overlap? Yeah, definitely. Stoic state of the Stoic philosophy essentially saying also don't attach to outcome, or so in that sense, definitely. Yeah, you can flow through life using other people's methods, but you are you. Couldn't agree more. I think people just need to understand themselves to understand the unknown. Also agree. Prior service, not sure. 1 point versus many points, like it's one better. They're very different in terms of attention. Oh, I see now what you're saying. Okay, so what's up, Dances with Cats? So basically, you're saying what are like, which one is more important, right? I don't. So I think that all of these methods, I mean, meditation focusing on one thing versus meditation focusing. Got it. Okay, now I understand everything. Polyphogy. I appreciate it. So basically, the question is: do you think that, for example, Stoicism or meditations that are focusing on one thing versus many things, are they better? Where do they stand? What is their hierarchy? So first of all, there are no meditations that ask you to focus on many things. There are meditations that tell you that you can focus on different things at a time and they will get you to the same place, versus certain meditations that tell you no, you should focus on one very particular thing. Like in Vipassana, for example, they make an emphasis that you should only focus on your body, even though in more advanced levels they do tell you you can also focus on other things. But I think that I always say that it sounds like a weird example, but I see it almost like the UFC, which again is a weird example to use in this context. But before the UFC, people had all kinds of ideas about the validity of certain martial arts, right? And people would say, well, this one is better and this one is better. And then there would be all these arguments. Well, which one is better? Which one is better for what? And then people would say, well, who would win, right? And then you had what we call the Gracie Challenge, which is put out by the Gracie family. And they basically said, well, look, we're going to show you that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is truly, truly superior to all the other martial arts. The way we're going to prove that is we're going to invite everybody from the entire world, the best fighters in the world. Anybody's welcome. Come to our dojo. No rules. We just go. No gloves, nothing. We just go. Now, obviously, we're not trying to kill each other. Submission only, but we just go. And they basically proved that they wiped the floor with every single person that ever came in from any other martial arts. So they proved that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is truly superior to all the other martial arts. Why is that? Because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very focused on the practicality of human motion and the limits of, and taking into account where most fights end up, which is on the floor. And if you can control the floor in a way that is superb more than anyone else, you can control them to an unlimited degree. What's interesting is that when the UFC came along, or when Dana White evolved it into what it is today, yes, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the beginning dominated, just like expected. However, with time, if you're just a really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy now and you go to the UFC, you're gonna get your ass. You're gonna have your ass wipe the floor. Like you don't stand a chance, right? That's because in order to truly get to a level of like completeness with like the ability to perform in that domain, you need all the tools. You need really good striking, really good standing game, really good ground game, all of it. So like the combination of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, boxing, these would be like four main ones where you really got to get them to like a good level. The reason I think it's a really good example is because when people in the meditation space insist that you should do only this one thing, it completely doesn't take into account that people are different, people are in different circumstances in life. Sometimes they have different predispositions. Some people are better at focusing, some people are incapable of focusing, some people are really good at I don't know, just sitting in one place. Some people have certain hangups that are more difficult to overcome than others. Certain people have certain traumas that anybody who came up with these systems never really considered because they didn't have that trauma. There's so many different variables at play. You can't really know. I think the only way to truly approach this is to say, look, there's certain meditations like Anapana that are really good for focusing. So you should have this down, just like in martial arts. You should have this thing down, right? So you need, if you right now can't focus, okay, so all we're doing right now is we're doing this one meditation that helps you to focus. Your mind becomes sharper. Great. Now, when you get to the stillness, great. From here, and by the way, this is how Vipassana works, right? You first learn how to focus, then you go into Vipassana. Then you actually do the purification of the mind, right? Now, I think that there's other forms of meditation, like Dzogchen, for example, that the philosophy there is, well, actually, if you don't aim, funny enough, because in meditation, the last thing you want to admit that you're doing is aim towards something. But in Dzogchen, the attitude is very much, if you don't aim towards something, you're not going to hit anything. So the aim is literally to discover that there is no self. That is an actual aim. That's where you're aiming. And I wouldn't say that that's the final goal either. After you learn how to focus, after you learn how to purify your mind to the level where you start noticing these things, all of a sudden your mind space starts opening up to new experiences that you've never considered before. Now comes in the other practice, which is knowing how to not attach yourself to all this new content. Because all of a sudden you see beings, you see energies, you see things, and you're like, holy shit, I have superpowers. Okay, well, now your job is to not care about that, because that's also a trap. The second you're going to start getting bogged down by like, oh, I have special powers, your ego gets inflated. You're like, oh, I'm special. Boom, you're going down the ladder again. Oh, yep, there you go. Another practice is required. Not to care, just let it go, right? Then, on top of that, now you're going to Dzogchen. Now you're going to like, okay, now we're really going to feel how we truly, there's no self. There's just the world. Okay, we practice that. We get to that point. We get to a point where it's like, we get to a point where you completely feel that there's no more self. You get into that state quite a few times. You can get into the state daily on a regular basis. Awesome. That's still not full liberation. Full liberation is going to arrive at a level where this is so solidified in your existence that there's no chance that you're going to create new attachments, that you're going to ever allow any of these like new abilities make you feel special. You're completely neutral. And then you still probably have to to learn to hone all of these skills and practice them daily, and then you reach some kind of a firm ground. Stoicism, I would say, is the Western answer to the beginning of this attitude from the intellectual perspective, because it presents a lot of these ideas in intellectual form that then has to be practiced from the inside. So which one is better? Depending on what you're trying to do in that moment. Ultimately, I would say it's like the UFC. You have to have all the tools and develop all of them at the same time, and then understand what you're trying to do. And at the end, like McLuhan used to say, don't be afraid to go it alone. You have to be able to go into this light or whatever you want to call it alone, because there's no there's no other way to do it. You would have to do it eventually. So even having the courage to go into these spaces by yourself is something that I would say is also a skill. And I think that's the best way to look at it. There's no best way. There's only what do you need right now to get to the next level, and then you keep molding yourself, keep learning about yourself, keep learning about the world. And by the way, this brings me very nicely to the main point of this conversation, which is the difference between idealism and panpsychism. And I do think that panpsychism, one of its biggest things that, on the one hand, it's much more alluring because it takes the slightly closer position to what we have now, which is it doesn't deny physicalism, but then all it does is adds another element and says, well, there's also this fundamental layer of reality that codes or is containing the quality of of consciousness. And when you build all of these things together, when this field of consciousness interacts with what we call physical matter, it instantiates consciousness into physical matter, and it comes across as information flowing in a particular way that gives rise to different arrangements of matter that were not possible before. Very, very alluring explanation. The problem is that from a scientific standpoint, or even from a philosophical standpoint, it just adds another element, which makes more sense, by the way, because I don't think you can, all of a sudden say that because of a particular arrangement of completely dead matter, all of a sudden that matter evolves somehow to be conscious without ever explaining what you actually mean by this conscious thing. So one thing that panpsychism does right is like, look, you can't solve this. Why don't you just postulate it's fundamental? Just like you can allow yourself to postulate that electromagnetism is fundamental. There's no really good reason for it, but you postulate it because you see it. You see consciousness, so you have to postulate it's fundamental. But it just adds another element without really grappling with how it interacts truly with the rest of it. With idealism, I think at this point, I think it's a more tenable position, is because you're saying everything at bottom is that thing of content. And then you can talk about why particular things appear as physical space, as solid and insistent as it is, versus something that is, malleable and esoteric as mind. But you can talk about that. You can, in fact, Donald Hoffman, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with his work at this point. If you're not, you should definitely Google him, Donald Hoffman. And he was, he's really trending right now. And they came up with a theory in the 80s that since then evolved to something pretty promising at this point, in which they essentially are using idealism, but they build a mathematical framework that shows how you can potentially derive everything we understand about the world, including space-time and everything physical, in terms of informational patterns that arise in a particular way from the one conscious perspective. One of the things that he always points out that is different about the way they're going about it versus how physicalism goes about it is that in physicalism you have two seemingly insurmountable problems. The first one is the Big Bang, seemingly to have you asking one miracle, which is something out of nothing, and the second miracle you're asking for is somehow after a while all of a sudden you have consciousness. So that's like two miracles you're asking to solve, right? But in his frame, you're only asking for one miracle. You're saying, look, yes, I don't know how to explain the fact that there's just consciousness somehow fundamentally, but you also don't know how to explain there's a Big Bang, which is something out of nothing. So all I'm asking you to do is to replace the idea of the Big Bang with the idea that mind is fundamental, and I can give you everything else. What it does, it eliminates one of the miracles you're asking to happen, because that miracle, you're putting it first. And there's no other miracle, because then you can explain the perception of the Big Bang and everything else through the lens of consciousness is fundamental, and then all the properties that consciousness perceives are arising from consciousness. Now, if this would just be a philosophical statement, it would not hold as much water. But they apparently have some kind of a frame that allows them mathematically to collapse very, very large equations and quantum field theories into something that is relatively very simple by postulating certain geometrical influences that give rise to then space-time and everything else. And one of the mantras that you're going to hear Donald Hoffman always repeat, which is space-time is doomed. What he means by that is that at this point it's clear that space-time being the idea that space-time is fundamental is essentially intellectually bankrupt. There's no way to postulate that anymore. We don't think that anymore. And it is true that most physicists are kind of getting off that horse. They're not really thinking about space-time as fundamental anymore. And this is not just through the Donald Hoffman frame, but in many other ways as well. And I think this is why idealism is much more on firmer ground at this point. Let's see what we have here. Tibetan Book of the Dead is layers of illusions distracting you from going into the light. Yet you're supposed to call the illusions on their bluff and go into the light, into the next layer. Interesting. Which is opposite of the conspiracy theory that the white light is reincarnation trap. Exactly. And also the fact that you don't really have a way to distinguish between these things, right? You don't really have a way to with this proposition that the light is just somehow a trap. It's an arbitrary binary decision about something that you have it holds as much water as the proposition that the light is there to help you and guide you, right? But only the difference is that all the people that report the light, I've never experienced it, but all the people that reported the light, as far as I know, none of them considered that the light is evil or tricking. They never saw a hint of that, right? The feeling of it, as people report, is very positive, blissful, open. All we can go is by that intuition because we don't know anything else about that space. But that's actually, I didn't know that about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. That's very enlightening. Thank you, Chase. Oh, and I forgot about my coffee. Hold on. Let me make the coffee real quick. In the meanwhile, I can put in some questions if something about my rambling about the difference between idealism and panpsychism was not clear. You feel free to ask. Make a coffee real quick and we'll be right back. Nothing like good afternoon coffee. Something very cozy about that. Thanks. So you think new idealism doesn't struggle without a deity? Do you mean to say that there's no God, like a Godhead in it? Is that what you mean to say? It wasn't until I listening to Hoffman talk about that that I realized panpsychism is a dualism. So I don't know if he said that. I'm not sure if I would call panpsychism dualism. it's manyism. So in panpsychism, consciousness is only one of many components in the universe. So the same that, in the physical science and physics, you have, I don't remember the number now, but there's quite a few, right? There's like 23, or depending on who you ask, but between 20 and 50 different like fundamental constants of nature. So consciousness is just one more of them. So it's not even dualism, it's manyism. There's like many of them. And again, I don't know if Hoffman himself said that, but it definitely wouldn't be a dualism, but like there's many factors. That's what idealism kind of solves, which is just you have one thing that expresses itself as many things. And this is why I know I mentioned it many times before, but to anybody who didn't hear me mention, highly recommend to check out Bernardo Kastrup on the subject, Kastrup. He's the most intelligible person on the subject, if you ask me, on the idealism side. Wrote a Q for you on YouTube. Oh, question. Spore Muse. Do you have a different name, Spore Muse, on YouTube, or what was the question? You mean in this chat or in some other chat? And or on one of my videos? Well, a mind to hold everything together, so to speak. Yes. So Polyfo. By the way, am I pronouncing your handle correctly? Is that Polyfoci? Is it kind of like Italian? Polyfoci. This is a common point of confusion about idealism, but this is why I recommend to listen to Bernardo Kastrup on the subject. One of the things he always points out is that the idea of the idealism is not that you have the mind and the mind kind of holds the world. It's that the world is the mind. The mind is the physical representation. No, the third person perception of this universal mind is the universe. They're the same thing. It's not like one is holding the other. It's one thing. And there's apparently some research in the field of consciousness that actually shows that, for example, one thing that they found is that certain people with multiple personality disorder, they sometimes can have a dream in which the different alters, the different personalities, would dream the dream from different perspectives. And then when the different personalities are present, when you ask them, they tell you the dream from their perspective, and they saw the other alters, the other personalities of the same person, in the dream. And that sounds exactly like life. So essentially, there's a boundary that is created in the universal mind, and these boundaries are singular minds, but these minds are different than the universal mind. It's not like the universal mind is some kind of an ultimate version of the single minds, because the single minds have an external environment that they're a part of, which gives them needs, drives, relationship to, and therefore an individuation of the kind that the universal mind would not have. So the universal mind at large in idealism would not have goals, needs, or self-awareness, because it has nothing that it's like to be it in relation to anything outside of it, because there's nothing outside of it. And that is a big difference. Another data point that supports this idea is that, this famous image that came out recently in 2012, I think, where they show a picture of a neuron and a picture of the big structure of the universe, and they look the same. So obviously a lot of people in the scientific community, first of all, brushed it off as just, oh, come on, it just looks the same. We don't measure things like that in science. Just because something looks cool and the same doesn't mean it is the same, which is true. But then somebody ran a mathematical analysis of the topology of both of these images, and they discovered that mathematically they're almost identical, which means that it's actually not that far-fetched to say that the grand structure of the universe is some kind of a structure of neurons, i.e. a brain. The difference is because the only communication, the speed of causation in the universe, can only move in the speed of light. When something is that large, that universal mind, it's almost like it can have in order for you to have self-awareness, you need to have a loop of information that goes back on itself, completes a task, and then closes a loop that tells it, oh, it's this, and here's other things related to it. But if you have a one directional information that is going, let's say, from through this some kind of a universal tapestry of neurons, it's going in one direction. It didn't have enough time yet, because of the speed of light, to close even one loop. And because of that, the universe, so to speak, never had a thought, not once. So it's almost like we're just on the going out part of the information that would eventually can loop back into a thought, but the universe never even had one thought, because it still didn't complete one loop to close in on itself and say, wait, I am, right? It never had that moment. But minds that are inside the universe can have that. But just like your brain is the third person representation of what it looks like, what consciousness looks like from the outside to other minds from the boundary, from some kind of other boundary. The universe is what the mind looks like, the universal mind looks like, when looked through the perspective of smaller minds through the boundary. Does that make sense? Let's see. See some questions here. Yeah, this live on YouTube. Wait, I don't see Spore Muse. I don't see. I see Jack, Dylan Love, composer, and Emily Moyer. I don't see Spore Muse. I think it's the plural of focal with a K sound. Oh, folky. Folky. Okay, thank you. We'll live in metaphors. Golden ratio. Said very well. Thank you so much, Jeff James. Entanglement is faster than light, though. That is true. That is a valid comeback for this idea. Yeah, I would say that that is one reasonable way to think that maybe the universe still has thoughts. If you take quantum effects into account, I don't have a good rebuttal of this. Aside from maybe that what entanglement actually is an observation when objects are actually in their more natural state, because they're part of some kind of a closer ground state of what things really are. And it's not even that they're entangled, is that they show the fact that they're one thing. That's why it's not like even there's communication going in between them, is that by influencing one of them, you're essentially touching the same object. So what you're observing is the more fundamental ground state of this thing, whatever it is. I would say that that's a more accurate way of thinking about it. However, it is not to say that there's no way of utilizing this to pass communication. Very plausible. So I take your correction. You can pronounce it however you like. That works, guess. But how do you pronounce it? I think that's important, no? I have to go in a minute. Might be back. Okay. Pleasure meeting you. Analytics. Tick, tick, tick. That's a cool. William Money Magnet. Entanglement doesn't allow faster than light info. It doesn't allow for faster than light utilization of this info as far as we know today. But it is true that the fact that this object is entangled with this other particle, you can necessarily tell something about this other particle if you do something to this one. So in that sense, you can say that you can gain understanding of the other one. But I agree with you. But there is no way at the moment that we know of to utilize it to actually do any kind of work. However, it is pointing to the fact that they are the same object essentially. So they're part of like I said, a more fundamental ground state. And I would say it's very early. It's too early to say that we don't know if it's possible to transfer information that way. On YouTube live chat, then you mentioned. Huh. Why is it not showing me the comments then? That is strange. Hold on. 1 second, I'm checking something. No, it looks the same in my other device. So, I'm not sure what it. Oh, wait, here it is. Wait, what? Okay, this is bizarre. All the comments all of a sudden appeared. What? Okay, this is a glitch in the simulation. I now everybody on YouTube, just so you know, I only now saw all of your comments. It didn't come through before. Thank you, John Searing. Let's see. That is so bizarre. I agree. Prison planet theory always feels a bit like missing the cosmic point of all of it. Why do we place limitations on ourselves so we don't kill ourselves? Came to YouTube for a longer form question. Thank you so much, Spore Muse. I now see it. Okay. You talk about the yin yang a lot. I'm curious, what is the purpose of pursuing a virtuous and good life that is pushing against evil if, according to the symbol, the good cannot exist without evil? That's a great question. See it live, and it was the first thing to pop up on YouTube when I pressed it. That's amazing, Sean. That's really good to hear. And great to have you here, brother. John Searing, glad you could what we observe in the realm of psychedelics can be the form that reality takes when there is not a conscious viewer? Maybe yes and no, because I think that you can still have the self with a lot of the psychedelic content. So I'm not really sure that would necessarily follow. But maybe at a certain point, maybe that's the process of the dissolution of the self. Actually, no, because you can have a dissolution of the self without all the pyrotechnics of psychedelics. So I would say no. They feel, and even a lot of the psychedelic spaces don't even feel spiritual, to be honest. That's a great question, Spore Muse, what you asked on YouTube. And also, I have no idea why all of a sudden it could. I'm so happy you told me. This is so bizarre. And I will address all the questions on TikTok in one moment. Let me answer this question. So that's a great question, Spore Muse. I think that the question was, again, you talk about the yin yang a lot. I'm curious, what is the purpose of pursuing a virtuous and good, quote unquote, life that is pushing against evil if, according to the symbol, the good cannot exist without the evil? So I would say that, first of all, the good life is not about pushing against evil. It's just to be good, or what you deem as good. So depending on your circumstances, you would have different definitions of what good is, but there's a certain signature of alignment with everything else that's going on. And I would say that as long as you're playing that role from the perspective of where you are fulfilling that role. And I don't know if you know this, but in many beliefs, the highest realms, if they have always kind of like I guess you can say a judges panel, like some panel of very wise beings that have been there the longest or have the most respect or whatever, make some key decisions for existence, let's say. And in a lot of belief systems, the highest orders always contain at least one, what you would call dark um, joker, or like this, like, because there's something about the ability to perceive things in both of the terms of the yin and the yang, because each and every element contains both of them, that gives you a certain kind of connection with divinity that nothing else does. Understanding that ultimately it all ties to one thing, and having the experience of it is one of the highest states that you can possibly occupy. And to make it not that esoteric and maybe bring it down to something that we can implement in our lives, I think the trap is to think in terms of good in terms of the opposite of evil versus the fulfillment of a certain kind of signature that you came here to do. So, for example, there's certain people that you can, when you look at them, you can see that they're just this, they're light. Not, it's not acted out. It's not a, a game they're playing. They're light. You can see that. But sometimes you would meet somebody and they're clearly a dark being, but they're not evil. They're not what you would call misbehaving for no reason or just for the sake of like hurting something, right? They're not conniving. They're just dark. They're like, they wear dark clothes. They have dark predispensations. They have a dark sense of humor. But if you know them long enough, you realize they're an outstanding person. That take care of their family. They care about people around them. They do things very often without even other people knowing that they're doing it for them. Do it for them, but they do it. So good and evil, they're not as simple as what we think of them in human terms. I think this idea that live a good life is a form of pushing against evil is this binary perception of the world, which actually is not true at all. It's not your job to constantly seek and eradicate evil, because then your entire existence is in relation to that evil or what you deem to be evil. And as long as you're doing the pointing out versus the looking at what you're doing and are you fulfilling the thing that feels the most intuitive to you, you're not engaged in any form of, actual trajectory of fulfillment that the universe might be placing in front of you. I would say as long as you play your role and not worry so much about what other things are, things will just kind of come into place. So I'm not obviously saying that I have some kind of an ultimate answer here, but I think that that's what reality is trying to reconcile essentially. But the best way I can think of it is if you live in a way that is, you're in the flow as much as possible, you do the things that you deem that feels right to you, that are part of this like more wholesome way of being, and you don't think so much about correcting others, but just do the best you can in your own little bubble. I would say that eventually, if everything in the universe does this, eventually kind of things just kind of fall into place. There's this perfect balance of everything. And when that happens, something is supposed to be unlocked in reality itself. So the reconciliation is you don't act in accordance of what you're fighting, but you act out of a place of just alignment with the thing that feels the most correct to you. And the style of how it's expressed is a secondary thing. Like I said, I'm sure that some of you, if not all of you, had an experience of meeting a person who on the surface of it is like, either like the bad boy or again, the style is like more like literally dark, right? But it doesn't always imply a person who's trying to hurt others or do things like that. It's just a style of expression, and it goes into like the smallest nooks and crannies of existence itself. Like I said before, I view good in terms of more open arcs that aim towards open-ended, aim towards, longer planning versus shorter circuits, which are like more dark, which is like immediate fulfillment. And the extent to which you throw this arc out and allow for some of the white to carry it out, but then you have to close it with the black. And then you create a structure. So they work in tandem, they work together. They're not against one another. If you're only going to have a society of people who just like, meet all day and then I'll show you an example of I guess the good, wholesome run amok, right? You have this entire community of people who are just like, oh, really good Christians, and they believe in God, and they do all this stuff, and they just meet together, But the second anything enters this space that is different than what they're familiar with, they immediately becomes xenophobic. They wouldn't admit it because they think of it in terms of like they start rejecting inside of themselves even the feeling that is being awakened, which is like, wait, this is different. I don't want it. So they first have this like push against the different, but also they then have another push inside of themselves from the push itself. They're like, I'm not supposed to have these feelings. Oh, no, no, no. So they're like, push it away. They pretend it doesn't exist. Now it creates a split. Now they are actually acting out the dark because they're pretending, they're lying to themselves, to the environment. They're putting up a facade. It's different, right? This is why Carl Jung talked about with something that's called the irreducible rascality, which is that element that if you don't understand that you yourself are also this rascal ultimately, if you don't see it in yourself, you will only see it in others, and you will always be blaming everything else for the doings of whatever is wrong in your life or in the doings of the world. And by the way, this is also why I'm saying all these conspiracy theories, they're essentially a confused form, a globalized, confused form of that, which is like these rich people, they're the evildoers. I'm a good person. No, you're not. You're the same piece of shit like everybody else, right? You're trying your best. They're trying their best. It doesn't mean that there's no people that are like also like, actual people who like, don't care about hurting other people just to gain, of course. But so are you. We do it all the time. We don't do it in a way that anybody notices because we're not important enough, but we do it all the time. So realizing that we all have these elements is actually part of the combining of the yin and the yang and understanding that no one is innocent. And that is the true understanding of that element. The people that are smiling too much and they're like fake nice, right? It's uncomfortable. You spend a little bit too long with these people, it becomes uncomfortable because without even saying it, there's a tacit assumption that you need to play their game. You need to be always, wait, why are you using this language? Like, wait a second, what? If it's a natural expression, who are you to say what language use or not use? What is that, right? That is actually the dark. That's not the light. The fact that you always show up with a buttoned up shirt doesn't mean that you're all good. Doesn't mean any of that. So it's an infinite flux of left and right and left and right, and knowing that you have that inside of you and knowing how to pay attention to and go, here I am. Nobody would know, but I am making this decision that is actually benefiting me more than anybody else. Is that right? Or can I make a different turn? And again, nobody will know either way, but can I do it even though nobody would know? Now that's true goodness, right? Or I would say that's true balance. The balance between these two is what actually brings the best outcome, not to aim towards the just one side and trying to eradicate the other one. So I would say that just finding the middle lane and incorporating both of these things is the thing that you want to be able to exert in the world to the extent that you can. Let's see. Have you heard of the theory that visuals of psychedelics are representations, cognitive functions? Yeah, I've heard them. I would say they're just wrong. I would go as far as to just immediately say that that's actually just wrong, or like at least in the sense that people coming from the physicalist perspective, that is like the mind is an arising property of the brain, and psychedelic elements are just kind of like thoughts that took a physical form. I'm comfortable with passing a judgment here and saying that's just wrong. That's just not true. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going way back, guys. Apologies. Polyphogy Hadron Collider just did it last month. Oh, I see that you were responding to Polyphogy about the entanglement doesn't allow faster than light info. Soulflow, what he meant is that the fact that you can entangle things does not mean that you can actually have faster than light communication, which is in fact true. No one's got time for that mess. It all exists within concept of time. Let's talk beyond that. Well, I would say, Jeff James, I appreciate your participation, but I would say that any attempt to talk about things beyond our ability to conceive of them is not a real proposition, right? When you say, let's talk about things outside of time, can you envision anything without time? No. So, what are you really saying? Couldn't you use quantum entanglement as a sort of Morse code device to transmit information? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's too early to say if it's not possible to somehow utilize this. I'm sure that eventually, if it's possible, we'll be clever enough to figure it out. I go with foci, plural of focus, to like octopus is the plural of octopus. Nice. Pegasi, plural. Pegasi. We are biological time machines incubating an electromagnetic consciousness. It's very poetic, might even be true. I'm not sure. We collect relationships to the multiverse to have a shared reality. Okay, let me see. By the way, if you find this valuable, feel free to ask a few more questions about this, because I do think that this is a close thing to my heart, because I do. This is one of my, man, not trigger points, but it's one of these things that when I feel that people miss this point about, they constantly like blame somebody else, or it's a very functionally problematic attitude, because it gives rise to all the confusion that you see in the world. If you see a lot of confusion from younger people now about certain things, that is because of this. That's because there's some kind of a severing between the village elders. There's no connection with the adults in the room that experience more in life. And kids always think that they know better than everybody else. That's the nature of being a kid. And when I'm saying kids, I mean, I would say it's all the way to 25, right? Especially now, because back in the day, up, by the age of 19, you had to be a fully fledged adult that makes serious decisions. Now you don't really have to make serious decisions. So you stay a kid till about 28, 29. So because there's this disconnect between the need to engage with the village elders that have experienced more than from life, and there's this predispensation to not listen to them because there's no need. And somebody said it the other day, and I actually thought it was probably true, which is that the reason that there's this disconnect is because usually back in the day, the connection was maintained by the fact that the village elders and the people that are more adult than you have certain abilities and knowledge and skills that you need to be connected to, like, I don't know, milking a cow or anything, like craft, right? Now, the main craft that makes any difference is computation, or anything in the computational space. So the internet, everything is on the internet, right? Because adults are actually way worse at this than kids. Kids don't need adults. So there's no need to maintain this connection between what you need to learn, because literally adults can't help you with that, right? If anything, it's the other way around. So now you have this flip where all of a sudden the kids hold all the power and all the true knowledge that seems to be relevant to this world. However, that's the trap. That's a mistake, because the human experience is not just contrived of the physical abilities that you can bring and influence the world with, but also the kinds of attitudes that you carry throughout your life, and the kinds of attitudes that you carry in any given moment that are being expressed through the tools that you bring into the world. So if the internet is being run by 18 to 26-year-olds, their values are going to be very, very strongly reflected in everything that is in the system. That's how you see, anybody who's disagreeing with a certain point of opinion is being canceled, and literally their account is being deleted, like we heard the other day, which is insane. And it is so dangerous. And the reason that is this way is because you have this disconnect. So now what we have to find a way to do is to actually articulate a new form of wisdom that is appealing to younger people, that they will want to listen to people that had more life experience, and understand that unless they will adopt some of these wisdoms, they will eventually run the world into the ground. And people say it all the time, but it is true in this case, because if you don't have the ability to understand that you're not also all self-righteous, you're not all that good, you're not this perfect exemplar of how things should be or how a person should be, which is a thing that is actually learned much later in life. You have to mess up or fuck up quite a bit in life to truly understand this. Like usually only in your 30s you start understanding like, oh, I was convinced that all of these things that I would, if I would do them, I would be, at the top of the game. All of a sudden, I'm not at the top of the game, and I was like, wait, well, maybe I need to reconsider this humility, and also the fact that the gas pedal of the ego is kind of being released a little bit later in life. So you kind of like you start reevaluating things. If you have none of that, and you just have full throttle till you run out of road, you'll just run out of road. You're not going to have any steering mechanisms. And that is such an important point, that and it all, the seed of it lays in the fact that you remember that you're not all that, and that all of these things that you're pointing your finger at and blaming the world exists in you. And that understanding, it's very hard one, and it needs to be reintroduced into the understanding of even younger generations, because they're the one that actually carrying the torch into the future. And now also don't really have any reason to listen to adults, which is, so how do you make quote unquote spoiled brats with infinite power to understand that unless they adopt some humility, they will literally run themselves and the world into the ground? How do you do that? I don't know, but it has to happen. And maybe the spiritual awakening is part of that, is part of that understanding that ultimately, yes, physically you can do anything you want, but unless there's a certain attitude, and that attitude can be encapsulated as a spiritual breath, spiritual level of understanding of the world, you will eventually blow up the planet. And maybe ultimately, universally, and I believe that's the case, that's actually the truth that all civilizations arrive at. That technologically, you can do a lot, but unless you have some kind of a understanding of the nature of things, of the nature of conscious experience in the universe at large, or in the existence at large, you will always end up in a situation where the technology outruns your wisdom, and then because you're just like going more, you just blow up, right? This ability to hold middle ground is something that is very important, and probably as a universal concept. So maybe in getting younger kids more interested in spiritual pursuits, in philosophical understandings of the world earlier on, that will drive some of their decisions when they get the amount of power that they get in an earlier age, that might actually mitigate the problem. And it is to some extent, I think, is already being done, because you see that some kindergartens introducing meditation into the system. Even in schools, you see it part of the curriculum in some places. I mean, imagine what would happen if in the first 5 years of kids entering the system, they are being taught meditation every single day. Imagine what world you're going to be living in if that would be the case. I'm not talking about any dogmas. I'm not talking about believing in extra realms or whatever. It doesn't matter. You just teach them how to focus and how to control their internal state, emotional state, so they don't grow up into a person who, when they're being disagreed with, they see it as a form of violence. That's a real thing. That's a real thing. Like, you have somebody with a lot of power who works in some position in some tech company, and they believe that if somebody disagrees with what they think, this is real. That's a form of violence, and therefore, because it's violence, they're justified in shutting that down, because it's equivalent to a punch. Somebody punches you on the street, you're justified by law to stop them any means necessary. From that moment, you have to stop them physically if they're attacking you. And because they think this is equivalent, they get to stop you in the market of ideas. And that's how you suppress language. That's how you suppress ideas. That's how you suppress differences of opinion. And here you go, a brave new world. That is all the most Orwellian possible world. And it's all because you didn't have this central line of wisdom, connectedness to one another, to the world, to all of these things. This is why they're important, not because it's some wholesome good thing, but because it's some kind of a mechanism that allows for a more universal system to exist for longer in the universal scale of things, versus just like being, living on one planet. Let's see. Let me go here and see some comments. For foci. Foci is cool. Polyfoci. Through multiverse to have shared reality. Ryan Schmidt. I agree with your comments. Thank you for that. All choices are valid. It's up to you to choose what state you prefer. Be happy for no reason but because. I agree with that. You prefer the state of happiness. Yes. What are your thoughts on astral projection? I have no thoughts because I've never experienced it. I am interested. A lot of people told me about it, and I've even interacted with the astral projection subreddit. But I have to admit, I've never even came close to experience anything like that. So I don't know what people are talking about. But I am open to the possibility that it's real. Fascinating, but I've never even came close to experience anything like that. What is your belief about why we are here? Whoa. Now, I mean, that is a deep question. Thank you for that. Amazing game, Leah. Amazing game, Leah. I feel like I've been a bridge between good and evil, and I want out. Two things. First of all, we are the bridge between good and evil because we are the channels through which both of them come across. So now, if you think of it in terms of like there's a war happening between good and evil, and you're in the middle of it, yeah, anybody would want out, but there is no out because that is the state of affairs. The only, I guess, out is what we're talking about that the Buddha said, which is relinquishing attachment, which is not an intellectual pursuit but a spiritual pursuit, which means it's an actual practice you have to do, and there's very particular things you got to do. It's not an idea that you share with other people on Instagram and say, let's all be spiritual. It's none of that. It's not about meeting other people and stroking each other's egos and, oh my God, you're so amazing, what sign are you? None of that. Will not get you out of the game. The only thing that will is not exchanging any ideas or thoughts, but picking up some kind of a meditative practice. That would be a good start. Now, I don't think that it's a war between good and evil. It's the flux between good and evil. And we are definitely the expression of both of them. So, in that sense, embracing the fact that we are a beautiful expression of both of them, and evil is not this thing to be eradicated, really honing in on these concepts and understanding that I would say that is the growing up of the universe. This is the us becoming young adults. I've mentioned this idea before. I really like this image of the trajectory of the human trajectory, just like the trajectory of one individual person, which, in the beginning we were toddlers, cavemen, sticks banging on things, boo 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 ga ga ga, right? Then we became little kids that push and pull, and this is mine. That can be equivocated to the time we were just developed the agricultural revolution, in which we all of a sudden had surplus of things. So we started saying, this is mine, not yours, get away, all of that stuff, right? Then eventually we became teenagers all the way throughout the last 1,000 years, especially in the last maybe like preteens in the beginning of the millennia, and then at about like all the way up to about last century, we were essentially teenagers. Rambunctious, crazy, obnoxious, murder, rock and roll, sex, don't care, with some interwoven attempt of the adults to intervene. It was like, go to your room, you gotta pay attention, all that stuff, right? So like all the religious elements that are trying to play the adult role in a room filled with teenagers that are just running around and are out of control. All the way to now, where we are becoming young adults. We start to understand the reasons for certain order, that you can't just break everything and blow up the system. You're not going to have any systems left. And you need to clean your room. And you understand why, because it's a certain orderly act that represents a certain internal state of yours. So you have to clean up. You have to make sure that the planet that you now left in somewhat of a disarray, you have to clean it up. You have to take responsibility. However, at the same time, this image, the reason I like it is because it doesn't render us as a parasite or as a disease, as a lot of people like to paint us, because we're not. Because that only leads to more self-hatred and hatred of other human beings. And the fact that we are becoming these young adults and gaining the insight of responsibility also says that we now have to figure out, we're going to, yes, like I said, that, you can think of Earth as our home, but eventually you leave home. you're about to embark into the larger world and find a career. What are you going to be? What are you going to do? What do you want to be in this infinite universe, right? And that is kind of the stage where we're at. Now, the adults are looking from above, but they're letting us making all the mistakes. I would like to think that they have some wisdom. And they want to see if we're ready for this, the universe's college, or whatever you want to call it, or like the first jobs that we're going to get in the universe. And they entail certain attitudes and certain abilities that so far as teenagers, we didn't really have because we just thought about ourselves. Now we are entering a stage in which we have to take some responsibility for the things we understand, but also give ourselves a little bit of a break and understand that, hey, yes, we were kids. Now it's time to grow up. And maybe, just maybe, we're not all that bad, but we had a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, and now we're gaining some control over them. And I always say, don't forget that in the end of the day, if something really dangerous comes, like an asteroid, the only ones that can actually save the rest of the biosphere is us, because we know how, potentially. And that gives us a little bit more of a leeway with our bad behavior when it happened, because we can also bring a lot more good than most things on this planet can. And that would be my limited answer of what I believe we're here for. Again, I always recommend The Beginning of Infinity as a really good book to give you a good perspective of what humans can be. And it's a very positive book that is grounded in what we understand truly about the world. Amazing game, Leah. The Beginning of Infinity. Great book. Duality is what we're talking about, which exists on a physical level. I would say duality exists all the way to the top. My astral projection experience felt like swimming in Wi-Fi. That is interesting. Why Wi-Fi in particular, and not, let's say, some other signal? Wasn't there a push against evil during the World War II and wasn't necessary? Oh, you can, yeah, that'd be great. And then we can go to the thing. Great question, Spore Muse. Wasn't there push against evil during World War II? Only in the sense that, so see, this is a great question because it exposes the complexity of the situation. In all of these cases in which you had, this perception that you had Nazi Germany, which were the evil, right? I'm not doing like this because they weren't doing evil things. They definitely were. I'm saying that just them being the evil and everybody else just being the good is definitely not the way that it works. In fact, America didn't intervene for quite a while, and they only intervened, notice, when they had real skin in the game, when they had to think about themselves. America only intervened after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Only then America said, okay, well, you leave us no choice. And then I guess you can claim America did the most evil thing, which is dropping nuclear bombs on innocent people. Was it really evil? See, this is a very difficult question because the truth is, and this is according to any person who's like a really deep world analyst, if they wouldn't, a lot more people would die. Now, that's the projection, that if we wouldn't do the dropping of nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you would actually have a lot more people dead eventually if you would go the conventional way. Now, the horrific nature of this kind of a thing, to do this kind of thing, the visual aspect of it is what kind of makes it, like on the surface of it, look like, oh my God, this is like the ultimate evil, right? But is it because you're now eliminating the death of a lot more people? This is a very complicated situation. You see, no matter what you do, you would always have these two streams of the yin and the yang flowing together. It's never separable. Hitler always, I don't even know if I should say that because this is TikTok, so probably they can take off this chat probably. But the guy from Germany, he was convinced from his own perspective that he was doing something extremely good. He was purifying the world from what he believed was a disease. Now, you can say, yeah, but he was wrong. Okay. But his perception was that he's doing that. Now, yes, I would agree that there would be ways for a person like that to actually connect deeper with what the world really is and understand that this kind of perception will necessarily lead to the demise of both himself, his people, and eventually everybody else if they get on this wagon. But it's still part of the happening. This does not mean for a second that we should not help mitigate any instance of this kind of a thing when it happens. But, and this is not to get us into specifics because this is way too inflammatory for basically everybody from both sides. But with all the events that are happening in the world now, I can tell you for sure that the level of confusion is staggering. Okay. And that is an element that is due to the same fact that people don't take into account that the dark side is inside of them. Always. These elements, they're not what we think they are. They're not. And Shadow just gave me a gift. Thank you, Shadow. This is very telling. They're not in their essence what we think of as good and evil. They're not like the person with the worry lines, with the frown, and they're like, oh, kill them. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the evil person. There's elements of good and evil operating through them all the time, and there's degrees. But this is why it's a breathing and evolving system. That's what the universe is doing constantly. It's not that clear cut. So were we fighting evil in World War II? Yes, but only when it suited our purpose, not before. So were we really that good? Or did we do it because we felt like we had no choice? And then did we do the most evil thing? Or we didn't? Because ultimately, also even on the German side, we killed so many innocent people in Germany, in Dresden, right? Just by bombing it like to smithereens. Was that evil to kill these people that I'm sure there were a lot of people there that didn't have anything to do with the function? But how do you separate these two? So it's never that easy. It's never that easy to think of what the true action there and what kind of energy is coming through it. It's always both, always. So seeing that in yourself is the only thing that you can truly do to bring about a true change for the future. Is everybody should take responsibility for what they are doing and not pointing at the world as the problem. But in the end, you don't know any more than any of us do. Agree to disagree. Wait, I'm confused. I'm just scared of telling someone the wrong thing. So if you're telling me this, I never said that I know anything anymore than anybody else. I'm speaking out of my life experience and convictions and understandings, which basically what everybody are doing. I'm scared of telling someone the wrong thing. Well, that being scared is a healthy responsibility feeling, that you don't want to say something that might actually lead somebody to do something that you would deem as not good or evil. However, if you don't take responsibility for what you do know, you're doing the same thing. So you have to take action of some sort because you're here in this world that is based on actions. And I would say that, at least for me, I can attest only to myself, to how I know I operate. I listen for a very long time. You watching me here speaking after a very long life of making a lot of mistakes, watching other people making a lot of mistakes, and understanding what works and what doesn't. And can I still be wrong? Of course, all the time. But it's a constantly evolving system. But I feel inside that I know enough to talk about certain things with a certain amount of certainty. And not doing that is also a form of lack of responsibility, because there's a reason why you have certain understandings about certain things. And if you don't engage with other people and help them understand that thing, or at least be open about why you're saying what you're saying, you're essentially kind of, just taking the back seat and allowing everything to happen. And that is not what is happening, because either you like it or not, you're always influencing people. And again, I don't know you personally, so I'm not actually describing what I think is going on in your life. I have no idea, but I can use your comment as an example. If somebody is always reluctant to say anything, it's kind of like being a mafia wife, right? You're just indulging whatever is happening, and you're never taking a stance. And that's also not necessarily good, because maybe you have a chance to actually change something that would actually be in the better. Will it always be to the better? No, but that's the nature of the game. You have to stick your head out. You have to make certain statements. You have to take certain actions, and sometimes it will backfire. Even most of the times it would backfire, and you learn, and then you try to do better. That's the nature of the game. Not saying anything because you're afraid. If anything, it also sets up, let's say you grew up in a house, again, not you, I don't know you personally, but giving you an example where this can happen. You grow up in a house, and the father is abusive. The mother would tell the father, try and mitigate the situation behind closed doors with the father alone, because she doesn't want to instigate the thing even more, because it will get him even more upset, and now he's going to beat the kids even more, or whatever it is, right? So she does it behind closed doors. So she tells him, so she thinks she's doing the right thing. But what she's also doing is she's showing example to the kids to not stand up to certain kinds of behavior. So is she doing good? No. She's giving an example of a weak position to something that you shouldn't be weak about, right? So it's always complicated. It's never easy, and you just have to connect to something that is deeper than yourself and try and act out of that place. That's the best I can say. Just exist through time and don't let the gut dropping feeling scare you. Good advice. Thank you for the gift channel once again. Became the number one. Oh, cool. Thank you. And by the way, if anybody wants to come on and say a few words, you're more than welcome to. Just drop a comment and I'll invite you. Like fractals? So amazing game. Leah, I'm not sure what you're referring to when you're asking about fractals. Doesn't necessarily mean evil. Yes. Thank you for your answer, Danny. I enjoy thinking about all this. Well, I appreciate that it means something to you. It comes from survival. Also felt sadness when astral traveled. What could have been the reason? I have no idea because I never astral traveled. Welcome back from the storm, man. Killing it. Thank you for coming back. Rejection of the truth of the yin and the yang. You have subconscious belief. You have to do shadow work to unlock your beliefs. True. All religions get, Kirsten is saying, all religions get to go, and we need to just love and accept one another. I actually would agree with you about 10 years ago. Now I'm not so sure that these larger, more robust structures that already hold some people's attention are not necessarily can't be utilized to do something good. Because if we just chuck away the systems that hold some people's attention like that, and we just tell them, just be good and just love, well, they don't know how. So that can actually be very destructive. Ted Bundy was charming, but also evil. Keanu Reeves looks somber and dark, but he's a great guy. Great example. Have a good night, Neo. And I love that it's actually Morpheus. Have a good night. Can you elaborate on putting the arc out? Thank you, Shadow. I appreciate you. Can you elaborate on putting the arch out and in then meeting the dark? Arch. Sorry, what do you mean by the arch? Get zest. There's some that murder a lot. Thank you, Sharon. Those beliefs may be projecting from other people in your past. Back sooner than expected. Are we trying to keep it not esoteric? That's cool. Just checking. No one is innocent. Some hurt millions, others hurt thousands. You are right. We get to turn down the volume on the other radical responsibilities. I agree. That's what the Bible, in a way, is about. Fruit. It's a Biggie Deluxe. Okay, a few more comments and then we'll slowly bring it to a close. Whose purpose was talking about? Wait. Whose purpose are we talking about? Not sure what this refers to. Has a video talking about fracturing souls and children and losing memories. You seem straight. I worry the words being used there will cause censorship. Maybe speak in a bit more code. Maybe. Which words in particular? Did you just type them in? If you can type them in a way that we don't understand what it is, or the algorithm doesn't understand, you should be happy that you have the right to speak your mind, no matter who understands. Okay. Thank you, Biggie Deluxe. As always great to have you here. It doesn't matter your point of view. I love the fact that you have the right to have a point of view. Yes. So you use the tools available to you to get your point across. Yes. Could be an example of handling certain situations with this assertion. Discernment, you mean? Yes. Arc. I still don't know what you meant by that, though. If you can specify, get says. Morals, ethics, sympathy, empathy, honor, loyalty. What's up, Chillaxed? Good to have you here. When you were speaking about unveiling the German mustache, yeah. Well, yeah, I realized it right away, which is really funny that you cannot mention a name. When you were discussing the yin and the yang, I was curious about your frame here. What? So, right, but I feel like so truly, I feel like I'm kind of like beating a dead horse at this point with this. Like, I feel like if you have a specific question to clarify, sure, but then essentially you're asking me to recapitulate the entire thing, which was a very long rant. So I would love to answer your question, but like, tell me specifically, what is it about everything that I said that wasn't really clear? Have you heard? Oh, okay. So this is already. I wonder if. Hey, YouTube. I'm gonna ask the people on YouTube. Do you see comments beyond Jack 809 where he said, "Have you heard of the theory that visuals of psychedelics are representations of cognitive functions?" Do you see any comments after that? Because I wonder if it still blocks comments again. What's up, Jason? Okay. All right. Thank you, Sean. Okay. So yeah, I think it was a good. I think we had a good 2 hours here. If you guys have any specific clarifications that you would like on the whole yin yang, dark, white, or the difference between idealism and panpsychism, feel free to ask now. If not, we'll slowly adjourn. I'm gonna go and check out some fun stuff in town today. Thank you for the likes, guys. I appreciate you. And if not for today, then definitely bring some more questions for tomorrow. And if you have any fun suggestions for topics for tomorrow, I forgot who suggested the idealism versus panpsychism, but that was a great idea. Are you based in LA? Yeah, I'm in LA. Why chillaxed? Why do you ask? And actually, just so you know, I'm gonna start doing some more in LA. At least I'm gonna do some more in-person events, and I want to invite some people to make for some discussions. So anybody who's in LA, feel free to DM me, and I'll put you on the list, and I'll definitely let you know. Oh, cool, chillaxed. Where do you usually reside? Thank you for all the likes, guys. I appreciate it. Wait, when you were discussing the, so get wait, get test. If you feel free to ask me that question again tomorrow, and I'll definitely elaborate. This universal mind plus universal brain seems to be beg for physical instantiated mind. No, you mean idealism? No, oh, you're talking about panpsychism. So yeah, one of panpsychism's issues is that it postulates all the other things that physics does, and it adds another one. It's just another postulation, which I would say is a legitimate one, but it just introduces another element. If you're talking about idealism, idealism does not beg for a physical instantiation. What it begs for is an explanation as to how certain elements of mind translate to an experience of what we call the physical world, which can absolutely be done. And that's what Donald Hoffman is doing. Oh, cool, Chillax, you in London. I love London. It's a great place. Oh, no worries at all. Get says. By the way, Get says, if you go to Dango Thoughts on YouTube, I didn't realize this, but apparently, so Spore Muse pointed it out. You can make longer comments on YouTube, and also, so you can actually go on YouTube and type in a much longer comment. I would love to answer all of these questions, but I feel like today, I ran my mouth as much as the universe wanted me to, and I think now it wants me to shut up. So I'll do that until tomorrow. But in the meanwhile, sending love to everybody, and let me answer just one more question. I mean, if the universe needs a neuronal structure for mind, that seems like panpsychism. It's not that. Is that in panpsychism you would have a situation in which the elements of mind combined with the elements of what we call physical matter together combine into creating what seems like a physical brain that is also containing experience or consciousness. But yeah, see you all tomorrow. Thank you for joining. Peace and love, and we'll reconvene tomorrow. See you, YouTube. Thank you so much for joining. Oh, nine people today. Awesome. I think that's a record. I'm going to keep growing. Thank you, everybody. Much love.